Today, we're giving Gian's 180 a bit of a freshen up. What exactly are we doing?
Coilovers in this are sad. They're very knocky, making noises. Could be anything in the car, but I think it's the coilovers. So I've got these ones out of Tay-Tay. And over here, I've got some mystery wheels.
As Gian already mentioned, these are the original coilovers that we fitted to Tay-Tay about 5 or so years ago. They've actually done pretty little use. They look a bit sort of ratty, but they're in quite good condition. What I'd noticed that I didn't remember, the fronts are an inverted mono, the rears are just a standard shock. There's all sorts of different theories as to which setup's better. I won't go into that because some suspension expert will tell me I'm wrong. But what is critical to the inverted monotype is that they're cleaned and serviced regularly. I guess that's why a lot of street cars don't run them. But we are going to show you quickly how to strip it down and service the seal and the bush. We're not touching any of the shock internals itself, but just more to clean it up and make sure that it'll be fine for years to come for road use. We're going to start the teardown of the shock by just making a couple of measurements. First one is just the spring base to the top of the locking collar. On this particular one, it's 52 millimeters. And then the second measurement we're going to make is just from the bottom of the foot to the bottom of the shock. And that is 48 millimeters. So when we reassemble the shock, we can make sure it's all back in the same spot. Biggest thing to note with these is the spring can be under a lot of pressure. So before you go disassembling the whole shock, you've got to make sure they're back off the spring. Just loosen the locking collar, just move it down 10 mil or so, it's plenty of room. You can already see there's no tension on that spring, so we can leave it there, there's no issues with that. Next to tear this down is just undo the 19 mil nut on the base of the shock. Generally try and use a rattle gun because it can get a bit sticky, so we'll just give that a hit now. And that's already off, so just check sometimes you can have Loctite on the thread. Just use your Allen key, move it back and forth. It should free it up, and then it'll release the insert from the body. To start cleaning the bottom half of the shock, I normally give the seal a bit of a good wipe out so it stops dragging material across the seal. Once you're giving it a good clean, just get your rag, something fairly long. I just use a hammer handle because it's nice and simple. Put the cloth over it, force it down a few times, pulls all the material out of it. This rag's now full of old grease and dirt and contaminants. Just looking at the bushes in the shock, they're all nice and clean. There's no odd wear or corrosion or contamination. Once you know the bushes are all good, just grab a waterproof grease. This is just a boating grease. Give it a nice little smear just on the bushes again. Get it all nice and greased up. You don't need to put a lot on because it's sealed environment, so it doesn't need to be loaded right up. One thing to note though is you do need to put grease on the lower bush as well. Just use a pry bar, load it right up, and just be gentle. So make sure that you're not scratching the lower bush with the pry bar. I always put a pretty good amount on to make sure that there's no metal on metal contact inside the shock. Just give it a nice even coating. Still always going to be some left on the pry bar or whatever tool you decide to use. It's fine to put it back in the tub. Or if you're really OCD, just give it a wipe off. Once you've got the bottom half done, I like to take the spring off. Just give the outer body of the shock a good wipe over. Check the chrome to make sure there's no pitting in it. This one's pretty good. There's no real big wear marks on it. I like to put the shock body back in just to move the grease around before we fit the spring. Once it's all checked over, you just got to reassemble it. So spring back on the shock, making sure you do run the shims that come with it. A fairly important thing to mention here, these bottom nuts generally do come loose, or can come loose. We always use Loctite on. This was Loctited when we removed it as well, so Just a good little bit of Loctite on the nut. You don't need to go crazy. Once you've got your coilover assembled, we're just going to wind the bottom leg almost all the way off, just to add some anti-seize to this thread because it can become sticky or worse, corrode to the point where you can't adjust the coilover. Even with these coilovers not even being used on the street, you can see there has been some corrosion on the shaft. Give that a quick clean up before we go putting anything else on there. Bit of wipe over. Now it's clean. Just using a copper-based anti-seize on this particular one. There's all sorts of products available, but this is just one I already had here, so just give it a pretty good squeeze along the length of the thread. Then winding this lower leg will then spread it around the whole thread, so we'll just do that now. Now that we've treated the thread and assembled the shock, we're going to set all the final measurements of the coilover. So we've got 54mm here was our starting measurement before we pulled it apart, and 48mm here, so give it a quick measure, and as long as those are both right, we're pretty well good. Make a quick adjustment, give it another measure. So that's 54. Lock that off. As long as our spring hasn't moved, the measurement here won't change either. We're at 48mm. Now that we've completed this coilover, we're going to repeat the process with the other front one. Once that's done, we'll fit all four into the car, measure them up, and then we'll get a wheel alignment. John had been looking for wheels for his 180 for quite a while, and I can understand why when he showed me these. These are genuine Desmond Regamasters. Now, quite a lot of you will look at these and go, yeah, cool, they're a JDM wheel. But what makes these a little bit special is they're not actually made in Japan. These were made in Russia. And this particular set is 17x9 plus 18. So when these were made new, they would have been meant to go on most likely an R32 GTR. So it's pretty cool that we get to carry on the lineage and put these onto Jian's 180SX. Since we've done the wheels, coilovers and a wheel alignment, how does it feel?
It feels firm, it doesn't wander as much on the road, and it just feels like stable. It's good that it drives in a straight line.
So it's just tighter all around.
Tighter, yeah.
Yeah, mad.
That's
Let's
it.
go for a drive.